and welcome to your third and final question on the Canadian Experience class. This question is with Devante and touches upon a lot of the topics that might potentially be on the exam with regard to the Canadian Experience class, so including the procedures for express entry, language requirements, experience, etc. So here we have the example of Devante. Now Devante is an American who has been working in Canada for the past 2 years on an open work permit because his wife, Mathilde, is an engineer on a 2-year contract with the City of Montreal to help build a bridge. Devante explains that him and his wife are very happy with their new lives in Canada and would like to begin the process of obtaining permanent residency so they can settle in Vancouver. Mathilde is in the process of organizing her express entry profile, and Devante would like to do the same, but he's unsure if he qualifies for any programs. He tells you that he is an expert in marketing and contracts himself out on a self-employed basis to companies in the Montreal region to implement marketing plans. He holds a PhD in the subject, speaks French fluently, and has completed 3 contracts of 6 months since moving to Montreal, but has no other work experience. After making an express entry profile, which immigration stream would you advise him he would likely be selected for an ITA through? And we have A. He does not meet the requirements of any stream because experience is not at the appropriate knock level. We have B. He does not meet the requirements of any stream because his experience is not relevant. We have C. He does not meet the requirements of any stream because he must intend to live in a province other than Quebec, but he does not speak English. And we have D. He does not meet the requirements of any stream because his wife also made an express entry profile. Alright, so take a minute. You can press pause and think of the important parts of the question. Alright, so hopefully these parts jumped out at you. Now we have the amount of time he's been in Canada, basically what he's been doing in Canada as well. So he's been working in Canada for the past 2 years on an open work permit. And we have his intent as well. So his intent, of course, along with his wife, is that they want to move to Vancouver and settle in. And of course we have part of the question there is if he qualifies for any immigration programs through express entry. Then we have some of his qualifications, and we have his work experience over there as well. Now, as we dig a little bit deeper into this and really analyze those important parts of the scenario that they give us, we can see that he has been working in Canada for the past 2 years on an open work permit. Alright, we could see that the intent that they have is to obtain their permanent residency so they can move to Vancouver. We can see part of the question itself, and that is, of course, if the person qualifies under any programs through express entry. And we have some of his personal experience and qualifications. So he's an expert in marketing and employs himself out to companies. We can assume that that is perhaps as a marketing executive or marketing expert, knock OA. We can see his qualifications, so the PhD, and he's fluent in French. We can see his work experience in Canada, which is of course those 3 contracts of 6 months that he's completed on a self-employed basis. Now, as we go back and see this as a whole, it's going to, again, really help us to take a look at the entire question and get those potential answers clarified. So let's explore A. Now, in A, they say he does not meet the requirements of any stream because his experience is not at the appropriate NOC level. And we can see when we're looking at the NOC, so remember when we're looking at experience, time and role, of course, are incredibly important in helping you choose the correct answer. And we can see over here he's an expert in marketing and contracts himself out on a self-employed basis to implement marketing plans. Holds a PhD in the subject, speaks French fluently. When we're looking at the NOC requirements for all of the streams under express entry, so by that I mean the Federal Skilled Trades Program, Federal Skilled Worker, Canadian Experience class. In terms of NOC, under the Canadian Experience class and the Federal Skilled Worker Program, that experience has to be at a NOC OAB level. In the Federal Skilled Trades Program, that work experience has to be in an eligible trade. Alright, so we can see that his work experience actually meets the requirements because it's most likely a NOC OA level. And with this, we can see that A is incorrect. Let's jump ahead to C. So C says he does not meet the requirements of any stream because he must intend to live in a province other than Quebec, but he does not speak English, pardon me. When you go back to that scenario, you can see that he speaks French fluently. They don't mention anything about English. And he wants to settle in Vancouver. So remember that, yes, in real life in Vancouver, somebody who speaks French fluently but perhaps doesn't speak English would have a bit of a difficult time. But in terms of your exam and scenarios that might pop up on your exam, when you're looking at CLB levels and language requirements and also intent requirements for living in Canada, you have to think of a couple little things here. So remember that under all of these streams, a person cannot intend to live in Quebec, and they're not going to live in Quebec, they want to move to Vancouver. And then in the Federal Skilled Worker Program and the Canadian Experience Program, if the person's experience is at a NOC OA level, that person has to have a CLB 7 in English or French. Under the Federal Skilled Trades Program and the Canadian Experience class at a NOC B level, the person has to demonstrate a CLB 5 in English or French. So we can see that this one is incorrect as well, because if a person speaks French, they qualify as much as they would if they speak English in these programs. And with this, we could see that C is incorrect. So now we are left with 2 options to explore. Now let's take a look at D. So D is a general procedures question with regard to the express entry. And D says he does not meet the requirements of any stream because his wife also made an express entry profile. And we saw that in the scenario. As you may remember from the express entry lesson, both spouses can make an individual profile. That's not a problem at all. What they would do, of course, is include each other in there. And you're going to see this even in real life. You're going to see this quite a bit when you are exploring options for immigration clients. One of the best things about Express Entry actually is that both spouses have an opportunity to apply and be selected. It really doubles their chances in some cases of them being selected. Of course, they have to include the spouse on the profile in the application as well, but both can make a profile. That's not an issue at all. So that one really showed us that D is incorrect as well. Now we're only left with B as an option. And we'll take a look at this just like we always do, just so that we can be 100% sure about having this as the correct answer. And with this one, it's a pretty big option really, because you have to explore everything. So we have, he does not meet the requirements of any stream because his experience is not relevant. Then we can see the experience options, or the experience information that they give us in the scenario. So he has those 3 contracts of 6 months. And remember that he contracts himself out on a self-employed basis to companies in the Montreal region. So you're looking at 3 things really. You're looking at the time he spends working. You're looking at the role he has, just as we saw before. It is NOC OA. You might be wondering if his experience in Quebec counts towards the Canadian experience class or the other options that are presented here, and yes, it does. But there's a trick with this one that I'll show you right at the end here. So remember, with the experience requirements in these options, with the Federal Skilled Worker Program, the person has to have 1 continuous year of NOC OAB work experience within the last 10 years. And continuous is the key over there. We can see with him that he has completed 3 contracts of 6 months. So those are not continuous. And that means Federal Skilled Worker is not an option for him. In the Federal Skilled Trades Program, you can see that a person needs to have 2 years of work experience in an eligible trade within the last 5 years. When we took a look at his role, he was working in marketing, so as a marketing executive or specialist. And that is not one of those eligible trades under the Federal Skilled Trades Program. And finally, under the Canadian experience class, he would need to have 1 year of NOC OAB Canadian work experience within the last 3. Remember as well, as we saw before, this work does not have to have been continuous. So you might be looking at that as an option, but there is a tricky little part in here. And it's not because he was working in Quebec. Remember that if a person's working in Quebec, they can use that towards the Canadian experience class or any other stream. They just cannot intend to live in Quebec, of course. The tricky one here was that self-employed experience does not count. We can see that he contracts himself out on a self-employed basis to companies in the Montreal region to implement marketing plans, and he has those contracts that he completed. So his experience would be under as a self-employed person, and that experience does not count under the Canadian experience class. So that confirms that B is the correct answer here. All right, well, that concludes your lesson series on the Canadian Experience class. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you learned how layered of a topic this is. So remember to really make yourself understand all those little tricky elements that play a role in this stream, especially in terms of experience and time and role, of course. and you'll be on the right track to passing the exam and probably getting all of these questions correct if they pop up on your exam. All right, so have a really great day. Thank you for tuning in. I know it was a pretty long lesson, so I really appreciate your time and your effort in this. All right, have a really, really great day, and congratulations again. You're now one step closer to passing the full skills exam.